I shouldn't have remembered her voice so clearly, but I did. Stay away. That's what she said the first time. She didn't raise it, didn't snap, didn't even look angry. Just said it in this level, steady tone that felt more dangerous than shouting. And the stupid part? I wanted to hear her say it again. The shop was nearly empty that afternoon. I was fixing the hinge of a cabinet door that wouldn't shut properly, crouched low on the floor with a screwdriver that kept slipping in my hand. The place always smelled like sawdust and cheap coffee, a kind of comfort I'd gotten used to. Then she walked in. Not with a smile, not with small talk. She had that kind of presence where you noticed before you even looked. Mid-40s maybe, dark blazer over a blouse. Heels that clicked a little too sharp for this dusty repair shop. She didn't belong here, not really. Which made me even more aware of her. "You're blocking the aisle," she said. I shifted to the side, muttering something about the door hinge, but my voice came out smaller than I meant. She looked down at me. Me? Crouched on the floor, sweating over a piece of cheap hardware like it mattered. For a second, I thought she'd keep walking. But she stayed. "Wrong angle," she said. Then, like she was correcting herself, "The hinge. If you go straight, you'll strip it. Tilt it just a little." I blinked up at her, screwdriver in hand, wondering why I suddenly cared about impressing someone I'd never met. "You know tools?" I asked. Her mouth curved, not into a smile exactly. More like she'd already decided she was one step ahead of me. I know when someone's about to ruin one. That was the first time I noticed the tiny scar at the edge of her lip, almost hidden by her lipstick. I caught myself staring, and she caught me catching myself. Silence hung there for too long, heavier than it had any right to be. I cleared my throat, tried again. "Want to show me?" She leaned down just slightly, close enough for me to smell the faint trace of coffee on her breath. Her fingers brushed mine as she adjusted the angle of the screwdriver. It wasn't intentional. Or maybe it was. I don't know. But it made the air between us go taut, like we'd stepped into the middle of a sentence neither of us had spoken yet. "There," she said, pulling back quick. "Now it won't break." I tightened the hinge, pretending that was what I was focused on. My pulse gave me away. When I glanced up, her eyes lingered a second too long before she looked past me, as if remembering herself. "Stay away," she murmured then. Quiet, almost to herself, but loud enough that I caught it. I could have laughed, made a joke, stood up and walked off. Instead, the words slipped out before I had time to think. "Then pull me back when you miss me." Her head turned, just slightly, as if she wanted to answer but thought better of it. She left without another word, the echo of her heels fading down the aisle. I sat there on the floor longer than I needed to, screwdriver loose in my hand, replaying the moment again and again. Not the words, not even the brush of her fingers. It was the pause that said more than either of us was ready for. And it's the pause I still can't stop thinking about. A week later, she came back to the shop, this time carrying a lamp with a broken base. I was behind the counter, pretending to focus on invoices I barely understood. The truth was, I noticed her before she even stepped inside. Something about the deliberate way she moved, as if she hated wasting energy on the unnecessary. "You fix ceramics too?" she asked, setting the lamp down. Her voice had the kind of calm that made you want to lean in, even if she wasn't saying anything worth hearing. "Sometimes," I said, brushing dust off my hands. "Depends if it's worth saving." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, like that line meant something else. Then she caught herself and straightened, placing both hands firmly on the counter. "It's worth saving," she said. No hesitation. I studied her hands as she spoke. Rings removed, nails trimmed short, the faintest smudge of ink on her index finger like she'd been taking notes in a hurry. Not the kind of detail you usually notice, but I did. And I noticed how she kept her hands still, too still, like she was trying not to let them fidget. I took the lamp carefully, my fingers brushing hers. She pulled back a little too fast, as if she'd touched something hot. I pretended not to notice, but the silence between us made it impossible not to. "You look tired," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but something closer to surprise. No one likes hearing that, I know. But I wasn't wrong. There were faint shadows under her eyes, the kind you only get from long nights you don't talk about. She let out a soft laugh, Unexpected, sharp at the edges, but warmer than I'd imagined. That's not very flattering. I didn't mean it like that, I said quickly. Just, you've probably been working too much. She looked away then, to the shelves of tools behind me. For a long moment she said nothing, and the quiet carried weight. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, more careful. Work doesn't really stop. You'll see one day. I wanted to ask her what she meant, what kind of work she carried that made her sound like that. But I stayed quiet. Sometimes questions break the moment instead of opening it. Instead, I bent down to examine the crack in the lamp's base, running my thumb gently over it. I felt her eyes on me, studying me in a way she probably didn't want to admit. I pretended I didn't notice, even though my pulse betrayed me. You can leave it, I said finally. Might take a couple of days. She nodded once, almost brisk, but then hesitated. Her hand hovered near the lamp, fingers brushing its edge before she pulled away again, like she wanted to say something, but didn't trust herself with the words. When she finally turned to go, she stopped at the door. Her back was to me, but her voice carried across the room, softer this time, with something hidden inside it. Don't rush it. And then she left. I stood there with the lamp in my hands, not sure if she meant the repair or something else entirely. Word count, 500. This deepens the pull, shows her guardedness, gives her a flash of vulnerability, and closes with a charged, ambiguous moment. The rain started just before closing. Not a drizzle, not the kind you ignore. Thick drops hammering the roof, so hard it drowned out the sound of my tools. The shop felt smaller than usual, boxed in by the storm. She was still there. She'd come by late to check on the lamp. Said she had a few minutes to spare. I knew it was a lie the moment she said it. Her watchful eyes, the way she stood near the counter instead of leaving. It wasn't about the lamp anymore. I wiped my hands on a rag and tried not to look at her too much. The light above us flickered, catching the tired lines at the corners of her mouth. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying to look composed. But the rhythm of her foot tapping on the tile betrayed her restlessness. You're stuck, I said. She tilted her head. Excuse me. Storm won't let up anytime soon. You'll have to wait it out. A pause. Then she gave the smallest sigh, like she didn't want to admit I was right. She walked over to the workbench where I sat with the lamp's pieces spread out. She didn't sit. She just hovered close enough that I could feel her presence behind me. You take this seriously, she said after a while, eyes on the lamp. Better than letting things break for good, I murmured. The words slipped out too heavy, too suggestive. I didn't mean them that way, or maybe I did. She must have heard it too because her lips parted slightly, and for 1 second, the storm outside wasn't the loudest thing in the room. Then her phone buzzed. She froze. Didn't answer right away. Just glanced at the screen, jaw tightening before she silenced it. Whoever it was, she didn't want me to know. Everything okay? I asked carefully. Yes. Too quick. Too sharp. Silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't comfortable. She kept her eyes on the lamp, as if it held all the answers she refused to say out loud. I tried to focus on tightening the base, but my hands slowed. I was too aware of her standing that close, her perfume faint but steady, her sleeve brushing my arm when she shifted. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said suddenly. I glanced up, caught off guard. Like what? Her gaze flicked to mine, brief, electric, before she looked away. Like you're waiting for me to say something I shouldn't. The storm thundered, rattling the windows. For half a heartbeat, I wanted to reach for her wrist, to stop her tapping foot, to ground both of us in the moment that was slipping too fast. But I didn't. Instead, I tightened the last screw, set the lamp upright, and whispered, there. Good as new. Her hand hovered near mine, just for a second, before she pulled it back to her side. The storm kept us in that cramped space, the air charged with everything unsaid. And I swear, if the phone hadn't buzzed again, I might have done something I couldn't take back. Word count, 500. This raises the stakes, builds proximity, introduces external pressure, her phone call, and ends on a near action without resolution. I don't remember how long we sat there, both pretending to busy ourselves with things that didn't need attention. The storm had thinned to a quiet drizzle, but she hadn't left yet. Neither of us acknowledged that. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes fixed on the lamp I'd just finished. It sat glowing softly between us, a fragile thing that looked steadier than either of us felt. Finally, she broke the silence. What are we doing? Not harsh, not curious, just tired. I froze, screwdriver still in my hand, the question hanging in the air heavier than thunder. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I already knew. The way she couldn't quite meet my eyes, the way her shoulders tightened like she was bracing herself. It wasn't about the lamp. I set the tool down slowly. I don't know. She gave a dry laugh, though it caught in her throat. That's the problem. The shop went still. Even the rain outside seemed to listen. I could hear her steady breathing, see her fingers flex against her arm as though she wanted to reach for something. Anything, to break the weight between us. You're young, she said finally, her voice softer now. You'll tell yourself this is nothing. A distraction. Something to laugh about later. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp but unsteady. But I don't get that luxury. I wanted to speak, to say something that would pull her back from wherever those words were taking her. But nothing I had felt enough. Instead, I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, letting the silence speak for me. You think I don't notice? She asked after a pause. The way you look at me? Like you're waiting for me to fall. My chest tightened. She wasn't wrong. You haven't, I said. Not yet. Her lips pressed together, her gaze finally holding mine. Long unblinking. A stare that stripped every easy excuse I'd rehearsed in my head. This can't keep happening, she whispered. The words should have been an ending. But the way her voice trembled at the edges, just faintly, almost invisible, turned it into something else. Not a line drawn, but a confession. I swallowed hard. Then why are you still here? Her breath caught, and for a moment, I thought she'd answer. Instead, she lowered her head, exhaling like she'd been carrying that silence for years. When she finally looked back at me, her eyes weren't guarded anymore. They were raw, unshielded, devastating. And all she said was, because leaving would hurt worse. Word count, 500. This scene gives the emotional peak you wanted, existential honesty, silence, slow pacing, and a devastating final line that shifts their dynamic permanently. The next time I saw her wasn't in the shop. It was outside, by chance, or maybe not. I'd stopped by the corner cafe for coffee, and there she was, sitting alone in a booth by the window. No blazer this time, no polished armor, just a gray sweater, her hair loosely pinned back, strands falling like she hadn't bothered to fix them. I almost walked past. Almost. But she looked up, caught me through the glass, and didn't look away. That was all the invitation I needed. Mind if I gestured to the seat across from her. She hesitated, then nodded once. There was a half-empty cup in front of her and a phone lying face down on the table, as if she didn't want to deal with whoever might call. She traced the rim of her cup with one finger, eyes following the motion. You don't usually come here, she said. You don't either, I countered. That earned me the smallest ghost of a smile. For a while, neither of us spoke. I sipped my coffee. She stared at hers like it held something she didn't want to face. Then she slid something across the table. A photograph, edges worn soft, colors faded. A man, broad shoulders, easy grin, arms slung around her like he belonged there. He looked maybe 10 years older than me. My husband, she said simply. I felt my chest tighten. Past tense. She nodded. Her finger rested on the edge of the photo, tapping lightly. Car accident. 7 years ago. I didn't know what to say. The cafe noise seemed to dim, like the whole place stepped back to give her space. You remind me of him, she added, voice steady but low. Not in looks. In the way you don't seem to know when to stop trying. I swallowed, words caught in my throat. The revelation didn't feel like a barrier. It felt heavier, stranger, like stepping into a room where the air belonged to someone else. I'm not him, I said finally, though it sounded clumsy and inadequate. Her eyes flicked up, sharp but glistening at the edges. I know that. She reached for the photo, but her hand trembled just slightly as she pulled it back toward her. I caught that tiny quake, the way she pressed her lips together to hide it. I shouldn't have told you, she whispered, almost to herself. You should have, I said quietly. She looked at me for a long time then, unblinking, as if weighing whether I could carry the weight she'd just handed over. And then, softly, devastatingly, she said, "That's what I'm afraid of." I didn't go back to the shop for 2 days after the cafe. I told myself I was giving her space, but the truth was simpler. I didn't know what to do with the weight she'd placed in my hands. When I finally walked in, the lamp sat on the counter, waiting. She was there too, already standing, like she'd been expecting me. Neither of us spoke at first. The hum of the old ceiling fan filled the silence, blades wobbling with each slow turn. I picked up the lamp, studied the base, set it down again. She watched me the whole time, steady, unblinking. "You disappeared," she said finally. I shrugged, eyes on the counter. "Didn't think you wanted me around." I didn't say that. Her tone was calm, but something flickered beneath it. Tiredness, maybe, or regret. I lifted my gaze, and there it was. Her guard was cracked. For once, she wasn't the composed, untouchable version of herself. She looked human, breakable. "I remind you of him," I said carefully. Her lips parted, but no words came. She closed her eyes instead, breathing out slow, steady, like she was bracing herself against a wave. When she opened them again, they glistened. "And you're not him." The way she said it, fragile, final, broke something loose inside me. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. Close enough to see the fine lines around her eyes, the way her shoulders trembled as she tried to hold everything together. "I don't want to replace him," I said. My voice was rough, almost a whisper. "I just don't want you to keep pretending you don't need anyone." Her breath caught, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. The distance between us felt thinner than air, filled with everything we hadn't dared say. Then she reached for the lamp, not me. But in the motion, her fingers brushed the back of my hand. Just a graze, almost nothing. Almost. I didn't move. Neither did she. Her hand lingered a second too long, her skin cool against mine. When she finally pulled back, she didn't look away. "This is dangerous," she whispered. I know. The silence after that wasn't heavy anymore. It was alive, thrumming with something that didn't need words. We didn't kiss. We didn't declare anything. We just stood there, sharing the same fragile space, the same unspoken truth that had finally stopped hiding. And when she sat down, shoulders sinking as if the weight of years had finally eased, I sat beside her. Close, not touching, until our arms brushed, lightly, like a promise neither of us could make out loud. That was all, and it was enough. It's strange, looking back now, how something so quiet could shift the ground under you. There was no dramatic kiss, no promises whispered in the dark. Just two people sitting close enough to feel each other's warmth, finally letting silence mean what it wanted to mean. I didn't know then if it would last. Maybe I still don't. But what I do know is this. She stopped carrying herself like she had to be unshakable all the time. And I stopped pretending I was too young to understand what it meant to stay when leaving would have been easier. She taught me that love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in the pauses, in the way someone's hand brushes yours and lingers because words would ruin it. Sometimes it's in the crack of a voice when they finally admit they're tired of being alone. And me? I learned that wanting someone isn't about filling the space they lost. It's about creating a new one. A space that doesn't compete with the past, but grows alongside it. People ask if it feels strange, the age difference. The truth? It only feels strange when we let the world in. Between us, it feels like balance. She steadies me. I remind her that life doesn't end at regret. Together, we found something that didn't have to make sense to anyone else. If you're listening to this, maybe you've been in a place like that, caught between fear and longing, wondering if it's worth the risk. I won't tell you what to do. I'll just say this. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't falling. It's never letting yourself lean, even just a little. That night, when we sat shoulder to shoulder in the shop, neither of us spoke again. We didn't need to. The lamp glowed between us, warm and steady, as if reminding us that broken things can be repaired, not back to what they were, but into something different, something new. And that's all we chose, to sit there, to stay, to not run. Because sometimes staying is the bravest thing you can do. So tell me, if it were you, would you have stayed?